I need to tell you something before we start. When you were a child, your parents probably told you never to talk to strangers, never take candy from strangers, never get into a car with a stranger. They told you these things because they loved you, because they wanted to keep you safe. But what they didn't tell you is that strangers don't always look like monsters. They don't always wear masks or carry knives. Sometimes they look like security guards. Sometimes they look like teachers. Sometimes they look like your mom's friend. And sometimes they look so normal that you don't even realize they are a stranger until it's too late. These are 3 true stories from real people who learned that lesson the hard way. Some of them almost didn't make it home. Some of them still have nightmares. And one of them still checks the back seat of her car every single time before she gets in. Listen carefully, and the next time a stranger approaches you, trust your gut, not your politeness. Because politeness gets people killed. The first story comes from a woman named Emily. She was 12 years old when this happened. 12. Old enough to know better. Young enough to still trust adults. She lived in a small town in Ohio with her mom and her little brother. Her mom worked 2 jobs, so Emily was often alone after school. She was responsible. She knew how to lock the doors. She knew not to answer the door for strangers. She knew the rules. But one day, after school, she was walking home from the bus stop when a car pulled up next to her. It was a blue sedan, nothing special. The driver was a woman in her 40s, with short brown hair and glasses. She looked like a teacher. She looked like a mom. She rolled down the window and said, "Excuse me, honey, I'm looking for my dog. Have you seen a little white dog around here?" Emily hadn't seen any dog. She said no and kept walking. The woman drove alongside her and said, "Can you help me look? I'm so worried about him. He's been missing for hours." Emily felt bad for the woman. She wanted to help, but something felt wrong. She couldn't explain it. Her stomach was telling her to walk faster. The woman kept talking. She said her name was Karen. She said she lived just down the street. She pointed to a house that Emily had never seen before. Emily knew every house on her street. She had lived there her whole life. That house had been empty for years. But the woman kept pointing at it, saying, "That's my house right there. My dog got out through the back gate. Can you help me check the backyard?" Emily stopped walking. She looked at the house. The windows were boarded up. The grass was overgrown. No one lived there. She said, "That house is abandoned." The woman's smile froze on her face. For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she said, "Oh, I just moved in. The landlord hasn't fixed it up yet." Emily didn't believe her. She turned and ran. She ran all the way home, locked the door, and called her mom. Her mom called the police. The police searched the area. They didn't find the blue sedan. They didn't find the woman. But they found something else. At the abandoned house, they found tire tracks in the backyard, fresh tire tracks. And in the back seat of the car that had been parked there, they found duct tape, rope, and a child's shoe. The shoe belonged to a missing girl from a nearby town. She had disappeared 3 weeks earlier. She was never found. Emily is 31 years old now. She has a daughter of her own. She tells her daughter the same thing her mom told her. Don't talk to strangers. Don't get into cars. Don't trust adults just because they look nice. But she also tells her daughter something else. She says, if something feels wrong, it is wrong. You don't have to be polite. You don't have to help. You don't have to stay, run, scream, fight. Do whatever you have to do. Because the one time you ignore your gut might be the last time you ever get to trust it again. She still thinks about that woman sometimes. She wonders if the woman ever found another child. She wonders if the woman is still out there, driving around in a blue sedan, looking for someone to help her find a dog that doesn't exist. She hopes not. But she knows the truth. People like that don't stop. They just get better at hiding. I want you to pause for a second and think about your own childhood. Think about all the times a stranger approached you. Think about all the times you said yes when you should have said no. Think about all the times you got lucky. Because luck is the only thing that separates the victims from the survivors. And the next story is about someone who ran out of luck. This second story comes from a man named David. He was 9 years old when this happened. He lived in a suburb of Dallas, Texas, in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. His parents let him play outside until the streetlights came on. He had friends on every block. He felt safe. One afternoon, he was riding his bike down the sidewalk when a white van pulled up next to him. The side door slid open. A man inside said, "Hey kid, I'm looking for my son. Have you seen him? He's about your age. Brown hair, blue shirt." David hadn't seen anyone matching that description. He said no and kept riding. The van followed him. The man said, "Can you help me look? I'm so worried. His mom is going to kill me if I don't find him." David felt bad for the man. He wanted to be helpful. He was raised to be helpful. So he stopped his bike. He walked over to the van. The man smiled and said, "Thanks, buddy. Just hop in. We'll drive around the block and see if we can spot him." David looked inside the van. It was dark. He couldn't see much, but he could see something in the back, a blanket, and under the blanket something was moving. He asked, "What's that?" The man's smile disappeared. He grabbed David's arm. David screamed. He yanked his arm back and ran. He didn't look back. He ran until he reached his house, burst through the front door, and told his mom everything. The police came. They searched the neighborhood. They didn't find the van, but they found tire tracks in a nearby alley, and they found a missing person report from 2 states over. A boy named Jacob, same age as David, brown hair, blue shirt. He had disappeared 6 months earlier. He was never found. David is now a father of 2. He doesn't let his kids play outside alone. He doesn't let them walk to school by themselves. He doesn't trust anyone. He told me that the scariest part of that day wasn't the man grabbing his arm, it was the blanket, and the thing moving under it. He still doesn't know what was under that blanket. He doesn't want to know. But he thinks about it every night before he falls asleep. He thinks about Jacob. He thinks about all the other children who weren't fast enough, who weren't loud enough, who didn't have a mom to run home to. And he prays that his own children never have to learn that lesson the hard way. You might think these stories only happen to children. You might think that once you become an adult, you are safe, that strangers don't target grown-ups, that you are too smart, too strong, too aware to be tricked. The next story will show you how wrong you are. Because the next story is about a woman who was 24 years old, a college graduate, a professional, someone who knew all the safety tips, someone who checked her surroundings, someone who did everything right, and she still almost disappeared. This third story comes from a woman named Sarah. She was 24 years old, living in Phoenix, Arizona. She worked as a marketing manager at a tech company. She was smart, confident, and independent. She lived alone in a nice apartment in a safe neighborhood. She was careful. She always locked her doors. She always checked her back seat before getting into her car. She always shared her location with her best friend when she went out at night. She did everything right. One evening, she was leaving work around 7 p.m. It was still light outside. The parking lot was full of cars. People were walking to their vehicles. It felt safe. She walked to her car, unlocked it, and got in. She didn't check the back seat. She was in a hurry. She had a dinner reservation. She started the engine and backed out of her parking spot. That's when she heard a sound from behind her, a soft rustling, like someone shifting their weight. She looked in the rearview mirror. There was a man sitting in her back seat. He was wearing a hoodie, the hood pulled up over his head. His face was in shadow. But she could see his eyes, cold, empty. Watching her, she screamed. He didn't move. He just sat there staring at her. She tried to open her door. It was locked. She tried to unlock it, but her hands were shaking too hard. The man leaned forward and said, "Drive." She didn't move. He said it again, louder. "Drive." She put the car in park and lunged for the door. She got it open and fell out onto the pavement. She scrambled to her feet and ran. She ran back into the office building and told the security guard to call 911. The police arrived within minutes. They surrounded her car. The man was still in the back seat. He didn't try to run. He didn't try to fight. He just sat there, staring straight ahead. When the police pulled him out of the car, they found a knife in his pocket. They also found a roll of duct tape and a length of rope. He had been hiding in her back seat for over an hour, waiting for her to get off work, waiting for her to get into her car, waiting for her to drive somewhere isolated. He had done this before. The police found his fingerprints in the system. He had been convicted of kidnapping 5 years earlier. He had served 2 years of a 10-year sentence. He was released early for good behavior. Sarah moved out of Phoenix within a month. She doesn't drive alone anymore. She doesn't park in open lots. She checks her back seat every single time, even if she's just running into a store for 5 minutes. She told me that she still has nightmares about that man's eyes. Cold. Empty. Watching her. She told me that the scariest part wasn't the knife or the rope or the duct tape. It was the fact that she had done everything right. She was careful. She was aware. She was smart. And it didn't matter. Because sometimes being careful isn't enough. Sometimes the stranger is already inside, and you don't even know it until it's too late. Before I tell you the next story, I need you to understand something. The first 3 stories were about children and young adults, people who were targeted because they were vulnerable, because they were alone, because they trusted too easily. But the next stories are different. These are about people who were not vulnerable, people who were strong, people who were aware, people who did everything right, and they still almost didn't make it. Because strangers don't always target the weak. Sometimes they target the strong, just to prove that they can. And that is the most terrifying thing of all. This 4th story comes from a man named Marcus. He was 34 years old, a former Marine, built like a linebacker. He was 6'3", 240 pounds. He had trained in hand-to-hand combat. He had served 2 tours overseas. He was not afraid of anything. Or so he thought. One night, he was driving home from a friend's house around midnight. He took a back road to avoid traffic. The road was dark, no streetlights, just trees on either side. He was about 10 minutes from home when he saw a woman standing on the side of the road. She was waving her arms, trying to get his attention. She looked scared. She looked like she needed help. Marcus pulled over. He rolled down his window and asked if she was okay. The woman ran to his car. She was crying. She said her car had broken down and her phone was dead. She asked if he could give her a ride to the nearest gas station. Marcus hesitated. He had heard stories about people using fake emergencies to lure Good Samaritans into traps. But she was a woman. She was alone. She looked genuinely terrified. He told her to get in. She got in the passenger seat. She was shaking. She thanked him over and over. She said her name was Lisa. She said she was on her way home from her sister's house. Marcus started driving toward the gas station. The woman was quiet. Too quiet. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't shaking. She was just sitting there, staring straight ahead. Marcus glanced at her. She was looking at him, not at the road, at him, with a strange expression on her face. Not fear, not gratitude. Something else. Something cold. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He asked if she was okay. She didn't answer. He asked again. She smiled. And then she said, "You're a good man, Marcus. Most people don't stop." He hadn't told her his name. He hadn't introduced himself. He asked, "How do you know my name?" She didn't answer. She just kept smiling. Marcus pulled over. He told her to get out. She didn't move. He reached across her and opened the passenger door. He told her again, louder this time, "Get out." She got out. She stood on the side of the road, still smiling. Marcus drove away. He looked in his rearview mirror. She was still standing there, watching him. And then he saw headlights behind her. Another car. It pulled up next to her. She got in, and they drove away. Marcus called the police. He gave them the location and a description of the woman and the second car. The police searched the area. They found nothing. No woman, no car, no evidence that anyone had ever been there. The next day, Marcus checked his back seat. He found a small piece of paper on the floor. It was a note, handwritten. It said, "You were lucky. Most men aren't as fast as you. But we have your license plate now. We know where you live. Sleep well, Marcus." He moved out of that house within a week. He doesn't stop for strangers anymore. He doesn't care if they look scared. He doesn't care if they are crying. He doesn't care if they are women. Because he learned that day that predators come in all forms. Sometimes they look like victims. Sometimes they are the bait. And sometimes the person who needs your help is the one who wants to hurt you the most. I want you to think about that story for a moment. Think about how easy it would be to fall for that trap. A woman alone at night, crying, scared, asking for help. Most people would stop. Most people would want to help. And that is exactly what the predators are counting on. They are counting on your kindness, your compassion, your humanity, and they will use it against you every single time. The next story proves that point better than any other, because the next story is about a family on vacation, a family with children, a family who just wanted to have a good time, and they almost didn't come home. This fifth story comes from a woman named Jennifer. She was 39 years old, a mother of two, married to a wonderful man named Tom. They lived in a small town in Wisconsin. They saved up all year for a family vacation to Florida. They rented an Airbnb near the beach. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. The first few days were amazing. The kids loved the ocean. Tom and Jennifer relaxed on the beach. They ate at nice restaurants. They made memories. But on the third night, something happened that changed everything. It was around 10 p.m. The kids were asleep in their room. Tom and Jennifer were sitting on the back porch, enjoying the warm Florida air. They heard a noise from the side of the house. A rustling sound, like someone walking through the bushes. Tom went to check it out. He didn't see anything. He came back and told Jennifer it was probably just an animal. They went back to their conversation. A few minutes later, they heard another noise. This time, it was closer. It sounded like someone trying to open the sliding glass door. Tom stood up. He walked to the door. The handle was moving. Someone was on the other side, trying to get in. Tom shouted, "Who's there?" The handle stopped moving. Silence. Tom looked through the glass. He couldn't see anyone, but he could see a shadow, a dark shape, crouched down, hiding behind a bush. He yelled again, "I see you! I'm calling the police!" The shadow moved. It ran toward the fence and disappeared into the darkness. Tom called the police. They arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the property. They didn't find anyone, but they found footprints in the sand. Fresh footprints, leading from the fence to the sliding glass door, and back to the fence. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been waiting. Someone had tried to get in. The police told Tom and Jennifer to lock all the doors and windows. They said it was probably just a teenager playing a prank, but they couldn't explain the footprints. They couldn't explain why the footprints were so large, or why they led to every window on the first floor, or why there were multiple sets. Tom and Jennifer didn't sleep that night. They sat in the living room with the lights on, holding kitchen knives, waiting for the sun to come up. The next morning, they packed their bags and left. They didn't wait for checkout. They didn't stop for breakfast. They drove straight home, 12 hours straight, without stopping except for gas. Jennifer told me that she still has nightmares about that night. She dreams about the shadow, about the hand on the door handle, about what would have happened if the door had been unlocked. Because it wasn't locked. She had forgotten to lock it. She had been so relaxed, so comfortable, so sure that nothing bad could happen on vacation. And she was wrong. She was very, very wrong. She doesn't forget to lock doors anymore. She doesn't feel safe on vacation anymore. She doesn't trust anyone anymore. And she tells everyone she meets the same thing. It can happen to you. It can happen anywhere. It can happen when you least expect it. So lock your doors, check your windows, and never, ever let your guard down. Because the moment you do, they are already inside. The last story I want to share is the one that still keeps me up at night. It happened to a woman named Rachel. She was 26 years old, a nurse at a busy hospital in Chicago. She worked the night shift, so she was used to being awake when everyone else was asleep. She was used to walking to her car in the dark. She was used to being alone. She thought she was invincible. One night, after a long shift, she walked to the parking garage. It was 3 a.m. The garage was empty. Her car was on the 3rd level. She took the elevator. When the doors opened, she stepped out and walked toward her car. That's when she heard it. Footsteps behind her. She turned around. No one was there. She kept walking. The footsteps started again, louder this time, closer. She turned around again. Still no one. She started to panic. She quickened her pace. The footsteps quickened too. She started to run. The footsteps ran too. She reached her car, fumbled for her keys, and unlocked the door. She jumped inside and locked the doors. She sat there breathing heavily, waiting for her heart to stop pounding. That's when she saw it. A face pressed against the driver's side window. A man. He was wearing a hoodie. His face was pale. His eyes were wide. And he was smiling. Not a friendly smile. A hungry smile. The smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Rachel screamed. She started the car and slammed it into reverse. The man stumbled back. She sped out of the parking spot and drove toward the exit. She looked in her rearview mirror. The man was standing in the middle of the garage, watching her drive away, still smiling. She called the police. They searched the garage. They didn't find anyone, but they found something else. On the wall next to her parking spot, written in what looked like lipstick, were the words, "I know where you live." Rachel moved out of Chicago within a month. She doesn't work night shifts anymore. She doesn't park in garages anymore. She doesn't walk alone anywhere anymore. She told me that she still sees that face sometimes, when she closes her eyes, when she looks in the mirror, when she walks past a window at night. She sees those wide eyes, that pale face, that hungry smile, and she knows that somewhere out there, he is still watching, still waiting, still smiling. I want you to take a moment and think about these stories. Think about the woman who pretended to need help, the family who almost got broken into, the nurse who was followed through the parking garage. Think about how easily it could have been you, how easily it could be someone you love, because that is the scariest part of all. Not that these things happen, but that they happen every single day to people just like you, to people who thought they were safe, who thought they were smart, who thought it couldn't happen to them, and they were wrong. If you take anything away from these stories, let it be this: trust your gut, not your politeness, not your desire to help, not your fear of being rude. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. Get out, run, scream, call for help. Do not wait, do not hesitate, do not wonder if you are overreacting, because the one time you ignore your gut might be the last time you ever get to trust it again. I also want you to do something for me. Share this video with someone you love, with your parents, with your siblings, with your friends, with your children, because the more people who hear these stories, the fewer people who become victims. It might save a life. It might save your life. It might save someone else's. And that is worth more than any view, any like, any comment. That is why I tell these stories, not to scare you, but to prepare you. Because the world is not as safe as we pretend it is, and the strangers are not always easy to spot. But if you know what to look for, if you know what to listen for, if you trust your gut, you might just make it home. I have one more thing to tell you before I go, something I have never shared before. A few years ago, I was walking to my car after a late movie. It was around midnight. The parking lot was almost empty. I was looking at my phone, not paying attention. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. A man was walking toward me. He was about 20 feet away. He was wearing a hoodie, hands in his pockets. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the ground. I told myself it was nothing. Just another moviegoer heading to his car. But my gut was telling me something else. My gut was screaming. I listened. I started walking faster. The footsteps got faster too. I started to run. The footsteps ran too. I reached my car, unlocked it, and jumped inside. I locked the doors. I looked out the window. The man was standing right outside my door. He was smiling. He tapped on the glass. He said something, but I couldn't hear it through the window. I started the car and drove away. I looked in my rearview mirror. He was still standing there, watching me drive away. Still smiling. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't run. I don't want to know. But I think about that night often. I think about how close I came. I think about what would have happened if I had ignored my gut. If I had kept looking at my phone. If I had walked slowly. If I had been polite. I wouldn't be here telling you this story. I would be another statistic, another missing person, another face on a milk carton, another name that no one remembers. So please, trust your gut. Be rude if you have to. Be loud if you have to. Be scary if you have to. Do whatever it takes to stay safe, because at the end of the day, your life is worth more than a stranger's feelings. Your life is worth more than being polite. Your life is worth more than anything else in this world. So protect it. Fight for it. Do not let anyone take it from you. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like the ones in these stories, remember what you heard here. Remember the woman in the blue sedan, the man in the white van, the stranger in the back seat, the family in the Airbnb, the nurse in the parking garage. And remember me, the person who almost didn't make it home, the person who got lucky, the person who is still here to tell you these stories. Because I want you to be lucky too. I want you to make it home. I want you to be safe. And I want you to never ever forget that the world is full of strangers, and not all of them have good intentions. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. And the next time a stranger approaches you, remember these stories. Remember the fear. Remember the screams. Remember the faces. And then do what you need to do to survive. Because surviving is all that matters. Nothing else.